Here's a stack of books that I read under 24 hours, and I think that you can too. The first one is Never Lie by Frida McFadden. I have read every single one of her psychological thrillers, and this is still my favourite by far. It is following a husband and wife who go to view a house that they want to buy, but it's in the middle of a snowstorm, and so they end up getting trapped there overnight, and they just start exploring this house and investigating this house while they're there overnight, because it was actually the house of an ex-psychiatrist who went missing a few years prior, and a lot of crazy stuff happens. Saving Noah by Lucinda Berry. I can't even really talk about what happens in this book on TikTok because it's very, very intense, and you definitely need to look up trigger warnings for this one. This one was honestly a very, very hard read, but because you want to know what's going to happen so much, you'll just have to sit there and binge the whole entire thing. The Selection series by Kira Cass. There is 5 books in this series, and every single time I read one, I sat there and binged the whole thing in one sitting, because like these books have like the perfect amount of like mystery and like crazy things happening, as well as like the romance side of it. I just think this was like the perfect mix, and it's the perfect YA series. The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Now this one, I definitely didn't read it in one sitting, but I definitely did read it within 24 hours, because this is following 2 sisters during World War II, and again, you just really, really want to know what's going to happen by the end of it. The ending of this was so beautiful, and I feel like I don't recommend this book enough. Honestly, like everyone needs to go and pick this up. Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I read this book like 3 or 4 years ago now. Like it was one of the first books I read getting back into reading, but I still vividly remember so many things from this book that I loved. Like I just remember loving the relationship and feeling their chemistry, and like again, this book just made me feel so many different emotions, and I do remember reading it in one sitting. The Shatter Me series by Tahara Murphy. This is another series where whenever I would pick up the book, I would have to sit there and binge the entire thing. I kid you not, this is like the easiest series to read. I think that every single book I literally would finish in like 3 to 4 hours if I just sat there and read it, and this is like one of my favourite series of all time. None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I technically listened to this one as an audiobook, but I do remember that I like binged the whole entire thing. Like every spare second that I got in that day, I was listening to it because it was so addictive, and if you're in a slump, this is the exact kind of book that would help to get you out of it. And the last one is Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. I did in fact read this whole entire thing in one sitting because it was just incredible, and I literally could not put it down, and I haven't had a book that's made me feel like that in a long time. So this was like an automatic 6-star read for me.